Hello everyone, my name is Courtney Beach. I've been wanting to do a video about this for a little while now, as long as I have been following the Nolan Wells case, and I just wanted to point out some observations that I've made and how I've been able to kind of process them and think about this as the investigation goes on. I know that now having credentials or being somebody that's worthy of talking about these things is a big thing in today's era. People immediately try to qualify you or disqualify you for talking about a topic, but I think that I'll start with my credentials on this subject and being qualified, why I feel I'm qualified to talk about it. And that's simply because I'm a black man in America, having dealt with experiences that I'm sure a lot of African American men and women go through. And then next, I want to get into what I think is interesting about this case. I think that there have been clearly contrasting ideas on what exactly went on with Nolan Wells, who's at fault, who's not at fault. And I just think overall, my aim with this video is to point out the difference in how Black death is perceived in America, how possibly black murder is perceived in America. I'm not here to charge anybody, condemn anybody. Have been kind of keeping up with the case since everything kind of came out. I do think that I'm up to date with everything that has been kind of verified. I know that there are some things like the audio that hasn't been verified, and although suspicious, I'm also not using that to condemn the boys either. What I do think is suspicious, and I think that we can all agree on, hopefully, I'm sure there'll still be some people that disagree, but whoever made the call to CETO in the first place reached out and claimed that the boat was undergoing water and they were worried and needed help. Simultaneously, a family member of that person calls the captain and tells them that they actually don't need help. I think that strikes as a little odd. Still doesn't necessarily lend to guilt, but definitely odd. And that the timing to be so remarkable while the child is actually on the phone calling for help. The grandfather is actually on the other line saying that they don't need help. It's a little strange. And just to follow up off of that, the audio engineer put out a transcript of what they deemed the boys to be saying while they thought that they were on hold in the background. And it sounded pretty substantial. I think that clearly it can't be used in a court of law per se, I guess not right now. But if those things were to be taken seriously, you can see how damning that conversation is, how it implies what could have happened to Nolan. And just the overall process of how this case seems to be going so far. And that leads me to my next point, which I think is why justice for Black people overall has been such a huge hurdle to achieve, because media, podcasts, they figured out a formula to alter perception. And I mean, this is something that, I mean, as a black person, I'm sure we've all been aware of. I think for me personally, just noticing how blatant it is has been eye-opening for me, and I know that kind of lends to naivety, but I think with this case and just really being eye-opening and seeing all these things come to fruition that we've seen play out time and time again, I think we are in a unique time, though. I think that because of the platform and everybody having the opportunity to lend their opinions, it does give and lend itself to being able to level the playing field. I think that for so long, media outlets have been able to control the perception of black people. I mean, any race, really. But I think the perception of black people in a negative manner, while choosing to show the perception of Caucasians, for example, in a more pleasant manner, while not all Caucasians, but I mean, we've seen lately even our president be guilty of some heinous accusations, some proven, but choosing to be perceived as more of the pleasant race, I guess. And it's just super ironic to me that even in Nolan's death, that the perception has been attempted to alter reality just yet again, to paint him as more of an alcoholic, I guess, being drunk during the time of the party, possibly using drugs. Information that's not really necessary to finding out what happened to him, but definitely intentionally structured to dismantle his victimhood, dismantle his human side, and almost make it seem as if whatever happened to him happened because he deserved it. And I like to point out some comparing issues that we've seen in America that kind of highlight that as well. And I'll start with Kyle Rittenhouse, who some look at as a hero, I guess, but somebody who clearly had ill intentions going to a protest with the assault rifle and ultimately taking lives, but in the media was kind of perceived as almost heroic, definitely more heroic than what should have been considered, if you take his actions into account. Trayvon Martin, who was walking around after going to a grocery store and Skittles and a drink in his hand, something that I've done time and time again in my life, to be looked at as a threat, and then later on to be spoken of by the media as a marijuana user, almost to condemn him and make it seem like yet again that what he got is what he deserved. And I think the bigger picture here is the perception and altering reality based on who they want us to be, not who we actually are, but who they want us to be, because they have to maintain whatever social hierarchy that they feel will keep or enable their survival. It just kind of simultaneously means that they must also diminish or belittle other races. And we've noticed this in the Hispanic and Latino community a lot more recently with even in going up to Trump and his antics with ICE and labeling a majority of immigrants as criminals and you know the whole spiel. But essentially dismantling them and breaking down their public perception into something that it condemns them and makes them feel as if, or aims to make them feel as if they aren't worthy of being treated humanely. So when I think about this case now with Nolan Wells, it kind of highlights everything that we've seen over the course of history. What I find joy in, and I mean, it's hard to find joy in this scenario, but I think that Black people and other races have always been able to overcome oppression by not allowing themselves to be suppressed, by working together, staying diligent and working hard, and not allowing narratives to be built on them, or not conceding to narratives. And I think that's even more prevalent now than it has ever been, because now we have an opportunity to level the playing field. Now we don't have to sit and just listen to constant beratement of our character. We don't have to just sit back and Attorney Crump said recently that they want us to be well-behaved victims. And that right there hit the nail on the head. I mean, how the arrogance of us to not want to, how could we be so arrogant to not want to sit back and just take it as they rip our families apart, they threaten us, and almost want to beat us into submission, mental submission and physical submission. How arrogant of us to want to challenge that. So I do think that our public opinion has pushed this case even further than maybe what it would have gone had people not stepped up and just had conversations about what was going on. I know one big addition that I've noticed, and maybe it's not it won't be considered evidence, but the audio engineer doing that work and putting in that extra effort to just highlight something that might have been swept under the rug had that not been brought up. So I do want to applaud Black people, Hispanic people, anybody that's really going through turmoil and fighting oppression, because they can't oppress us if we don't allow ourselves to be suppressed. And I think now the strength in numbers it's a cliche, but we have an opportunity to really stick by that and control our own narrative. I think by the vast increase of podcasts and people being able to speak up for themselves, sure, there's always going to be people who don't want to hear it no matter what, because they have their own dispositions about who they want us to be and need us to be for themselves to feel better. But hopefully humanity will hear our opinions, our experiences, and give credit to the fact that we live this. We're not complaining about what it is. We know the game. We know that it's rigged in some kind of favor, and we still accept the challenge every day. And I think that's big for us to keep continuing to overcome and not accept defeat ever. Defeat is never accepted. And if it had been, Our ancestors would not have gotten us to where we are today. We wouldn't be where we are today. So let's keep controlling the narrative. Keep speaking our experiences. Don't let them diminish our history. Just keep fighting a good fight. And for all you people who are scared of black people fighting, I'm not talking physically, I'm talking mentally and strategically. So don't get your panties in a bunch. Thank you for listening.